So, give you all a good official welcome, everyone, to the first of our Conversations with the Conference Minister connecting session. Our first connecting session post the annual meeting, and the fourth of our annual meeting connecting sessions. And I didn't even have that written down. I could do all that math in my head. Uh, just a couple pieces that we go over as we start any of this to remind you for etiquette when you're not speaking. And a lot of this is going to come from your questions, so I suspect there will be times when some of you are speaking, but when you're not, we ask you to mute yourself so that we don't have a whole lot of background noise. We would remind you that, as you just heard, we are recording this. We will post this on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Because of that, we just want you to be thoughtful about what you say, that it's appropriate, something appropriate to share with the whole world. There's a lot we can talk about that'll be just fine. And then there's a few places we probably don't want to go. So no giving out bank account numbers or anything like that. And finally, we do try to follow our standing rules, even in these connecting sessions, and ask that when you do speak or ask a question, that you introduce yourself by name and by church. Uh, and with that, I think we can dive in. I would normally do big introductions of those who are speaking. Today, you get to have conversations with Sarah Marian, our Associate Conference Minister, who we talked all about yesterday, and myself, who we talked about yesterday. So I'm not going to put lots of energy into those introductions. Um, the and just say the way we approach this time is really that it is your time. We are going to work off of the things that you want to have more conversations about, be it anything that I wrote in the annual report that you all had a chance to read, anything we talked about yesterday, anything that we didn't talk about yesterday and you want to hear more about, talk more about, things that you think we need to talk about at our next annual meeting or at Prepared to Serve or any of those things. You know, good recipes for potato kugel, whatever you want to talk about, we'll try to go there. So this is yours. Please tell us how you want to use this time together. I will open the floor to you. I guess actually before I do that, Sarah, was there anything that you wanted to say in starting that now that I just said we wouldn't say anything, I guess I didn't double check that with you. So is there anything that you want to start with?
No, nope. I love it. Open floor, open for anyone to come and share what their questions or comments are. Sounds great.
So yeah, with that, any questions for Sarah? And we'll start there.
Sarah, general question, Laura Savini from First Parish, Dover. How is it feeling being in this new role since February?
That is an excellent question. And I have to say it's changed at different times. So in February, it was pretty overwhelming. And it's very different from parish ministry. And so there was a really steep learning curve as and I love this about this job, but there are so many different aspects to it. I'm, what they call a generalist rather than a specific area of conference ministry. And so it was a lot to learn. I am feeling much more confident and comfortable now in October than I was in the spring. So that feels good. It will feel good to have completed a year, which I will very soon, actually, and have that whole kind of scope of what does a year as an ACM look like. So it's feeling good right now. It would have been different in February, March, but I'm feeling excellent. It was wonderful to have completed my first annual meeting as a new ACM and kind of get a little bit of a grasp on what that feels like and what that is like. So it's good. I like the work a lot. It's really exciting. I like the variety. I like getting out there into congregations and meeting people and helping our mids through the UMMT and working with folks there and working with search committees. It's fun work. Thanks. That's a good question.
So you
based on yesterday, Sarah, we never would have thought that you were fairly new in that job, I have to tell you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it feels, I was just saying to Eric actually on a walk we just took, like it feels like the right call for me, which is so like interesting because it's, as I said before earlier in my tenure, like this was not a trajectory that I had ever foreseen in my life before. You know, it was not like I'm going to do this. So it's been a real blessing to feel like this is the right call, and I'm in the right place. So thanks.
Here's Tom Taylor from the Third Church in Alstead. Sarah, the bantering between you and our staff minister there. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. I mean, it just married very well. It wasn't a conflict. It was just the whole thing just married. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
And
yeah.
meshed together very, very well.
We have a great staff. I think we all work together really well, and complement each other really well. And that's such a joy and a blessing to be able to go into a place where I'm looking forward to seeing the people that I work with and chatting with them, you know, about personal stuff as well as our jobs. So it feels really good, a good place to work.
Sarah, I was going to suggest, just so we have everybody on an even playing field, kind of an extension of Laura's question. Why don't you just say a few words about what you do in the portfolio of your position so everybody kind of knows what things you cover and do?
Sure. That's a really good point. So I mentioned I do search and call. So Gordon and I kind of divide up the churches that are in search and call because it's just really too much for one person to do that. So we kind of do half and half of the churches and assisting them in working on their local church profiles and helping them as they interview candidates, helping them as they're in their transitional time to find transitional ministers, all that kind of search and call stuff. We assist. I staff the UMMT, which is one of our acronyms for the United Member in Discernment Mentoring Team. It took a while for me to get that. That is the group that oversees the whole ordination process for 6 of our 7 associations within our state. So I help that team of people. I think we've got about 17 people on that team, and they are mentors and advisors to our MIDs, our members in discernment, who are the people seeking ordination. Oh, I just got a little correction from Gordon. Unified. All right. Sorry. Didn't get that right. So I sort of oversee that, help staff that, help guide that, recruit new members for that, help MIDs with questions that they might have, kind of do all of that work, the scope of work for the ordination process. I staff a few of our ministries. So I am on the Justice and Witness ministry, as well as the wider church ministry, there to support their work as they help their mission groups and all the stuff that they do. What else do I do, Gordon? Yeah, so that's a lot.
What are some of the stuff you do directly with churches other than search and call?
Oh, I go to churches and talk to them about, I go preach all over the state. Next week I'll be in Meriden. The week after that I'll be in Jackson, and then I'm going to be in Swansea. I go all over the state to talk to them. I'm pastor to pastors. So, if a pastor calls with something that they need to talk about, I will help to advise them in whatever way that I can, which is part of a real joy for me. I really love helping and just being pastor to pastors. So that's great. I also am the validator of profiles. So when our pastors put together their profiles, they come to me and I read them over and make sure that they are all correct and saying the right things. And I put a sort of stamp of approval on that so they can circulate their profiles, which is their big sort of CV that they send out to churches. And sorry, I talked over you, Gordon.
That's okay. I was going to say ministry teams.
I mentioned the ministry team.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
And then the other one I was thinking was connections to the national setting.
Oh, yeah. So well, that's very exciting, actually. I have just been asked to be on 2 different boards, which is really cool. I am now on the Common Global Ministry Board, which is, of course, the international wing of our denomination that we do in conjunction with the Disciples of Christ. So I will have my very first meeting out in Indianapolis in a couple weeks. So I'm really excited to learn about what Common Global Ministries does and how we function as an international body and church and partner. So that's really exciting. I'm also now on the board of Join the Movement, which is the sort of movement for racial justice that our church is taking nationally, to think about how to help assist our churches in that, and as well as help our denomination do that work. So there's a couple of things that I do specifically, along with going to Synod and being part of Synod and all of that. So lots of stuff.
Other questions for Sarah? You can ask me questions too. I'll go there. Sarah accused me of being punchy going into annual meeting. I want to show her I can still be punchy afterwards.
He had a lot on his plate. It was very understandable.
Okay, Gordon. Tom Taylor from Third Church in Alstead.
Yes, Tom.
How does one get to go to the Synod?
Okay. We'll answer that. Ruth, I also saw your hand, so we'll come to you afterwards. Sorry, Tom, I missed that last part of your question.
Is there scholarships or something? You know, I really want to go. I've been wanting to go for years, but I've never been able. I've been either my work schedule or financially, I haven't been able to swing it.
There's a couple different ways to go. One moment, I got to let Laura back in because I think she dropped her connection in her drive. We, as you heard yesterday, we have 13 delegates and 2 associate delegates who go to General Synod. In that case, the conference, with some support from our association, pays for all of those folks to attend General Synod. Those folks are drawn from, well, the 2 associate delegates are by role. I mean, we don't, whoever's in that role goes for those 2 pieces. That's not a piece we choose. The 13 associate delegates will be nominated, will come to before you at next year's annual meeting to elect. Those get divided up from folks all across the conference. We do have a certain amount of criteria that, in order to be in alignment with the United Church of Christ Constitution and bylaws, we have to meet in those. Certain people of certain ages, certain genders or gender identities, certain racial makeup in the delegation, all those type of things factor in. So it's a bit like putting together a puzzle. But if you are interested and you let us know, there may be a time where you fit well into that puzzle. So let myself, Sarah, or somebody on the nominating committee know, and we will keep that in mind as we are selecting people for future years. You also can go as a visitor. In such case, then expenses are in large part on you to attend. There are virtual options for most of General Synod. The one exception that happened this past year was one of the better parts of Synod, which was the keynote address by Nadia Bolz-Weber was not available to everybody virtually, but everything else that happened in plenary sessions. So even if you are at home, you can get to appreciate some of what happens at Synod. It's not like being there, though. So be a visitor if that works for you. If that doesn't work for you, and you want to try to be a delegate, let us know, and we will see when you fit into our little nominating rotation.
I shall pursue that. Thank you.
Thank you. I promised Ruth the question. or a comment or whatever she has to say.
Yeah. It's not a it's not a super specific, but I was noticing, obviously over the past year, there's been a large, I was going to say turnover, and that sounds negative, but I mean, a lot of changes in the staff at the conference. And I also noticed yesterday that there looks like there's also going to be, I think 3 is a large number of people on the board of directors to, who are in key spots to also be turning over. I was just wondering, how that's gone. I mean, everything from my vantage point has been wonderful. As far as the staffing changes, obviously, I won't notice anything about the board of directors until later, but it's just lots and lots of changes. And so I'm just wondering how y'all are doing with that.
Well, let me say a few words on the board of directors part, and maybe I'll let Sarah tackle the staff part of that as part of the changes that have happened. For the board of directors part, one of the things you said is absolutely correct. We really don't know how it's going yet because those folks started at the end of the meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
It was a much more significant turnover than we were anticipating. If you had asked me in May, I would have told you I thought we would have 1, maybe 2 of the officers turn over and probably 2 new board folks. By yesterday, we had 3 of the 4 officers turning over and 5 new folks on the board. Those 2 are related. One of the significant pieces that happened is Michael Denny, for health reasons, decided that he was not up to taking on being conference president. That meant in order to keep some folks in the executive committee, some folks in those officer positions that have experience, we pulled 2 folks up that were general board members, Jim Thomas as president, Sharon Urban as president-elect, which meant we had 2 more board positions than to replace. So that was really what enlarged the board numbers as well. Board makeup is not that different from what I said at General Synod, that, we're trying to look at age of folks we have on the board, gender identity and gender. We are required to keep a certain clergy-lay ratio. We try to make sure we have folks from all 7 associations. So that's a little bit of a puzzle to put together too. And we're in the end, with having about 3 months notice that it was going to be quite such a significant turnover, we're just thrilled that we've got folks that are eager and excited about coming onto the board. So I think there'll be some definite learning curve. I am counting on the folks that have been a part of the board in years past to kind of help the new folks get the lay of the land as quick as possible. But we have a pretty phenomenal board. So I'm trusting they'll catch on and move. It'll be a little more effort for a while, though, because it is just so many new people. Sorry, you want to talk about staff stuff?
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer your question just because being so new, I don't know what it was like before. But I would say from my vantage point, it's going really well. I mean, there certainly are things to learn. I know it was my first annual meeting, Thaddeus's first annual meeting, and Tivy's first annual meeting in our roles. And that being said, I was really pleased with how things went. So, I think we're all learning together. But I think, again, we work really well together. And I think we're able to be pretty honest, like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of learning there to be done and a little bit of growing there to be done, or, what went really well. I think one of the things I really appreciate is how creative the staff is, that we all have ideas, and I think we're willing to share them with one another, which I think really speaks to the openness that we have, that there's not a fear of naming something new or of trying something new or exploring something new, but there's some real openness to that. So I know that might shake things up a little bit, but that was sort of our theme yesterday. And I certainly think that we're willing to do things that are a little bit, different. And then part of it is we'll see, right? We'll see what happens. And I'd say part of it too is that's just the nature of church these days too, is things are changing, and being able to be nimble and responsive and creative are probably some pretty important things right now, not only on conference level, but on local church level as well. So yeah, I think it's probably a mixed bag, just like anything. It's having new staff has advantages and disadvantages, just like having staff who've been there a long time.
I just, as I said, I just noticed that from my experience in those places where I do connect directly with conference staff, it's been great. I've had nothing but positive experiences, and so, but I'm just sort of aware, like, wow, it's a lot of change. It's that's a lot for a lot of people, feeling, I guess, maybe, getting up to speed and sort of doing it all together. And as I said, as from my vantage point, it's all been wonderful, and I've got nothing but positive experiences, but I just sort of was mindful of that and just sort of wanted to bring it up. So
sure. Yeah. And we definitely want to hear, like, those places where it has been a little bit problematic too.
Yeah.
I mean, we also want to hear, because we are, at least I'll speak for myself, because I'm new, if I'm neglecting something or if I'm not doing something the right way, like, I want to hear that. So please don't hesitate to reach out with things that I need to know.
Absolutely. Didn't bring it up as a, as a complaint or anything. If anything, quite the opposite. So, and I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm Ruth Gallett. I'm from Longmeadow Congregational in Auburn, New Hampshire.
So I'm going to take a moment based out of your question just to brag on our staff for a moment, because I don't get enough opportunities to do that. The first two, I will say, you're right. There's just a total mind bend in having so many new staff. A year and a half ago, I was the one with the shortest tenure on staff, and now I'm in the upper half of length of tenure in staff. So kind of blows my mind. But you are always anxious when you are hiring new staff members, when you are replacing half of the staff, which we've done in the last year or so, more than half if you go a year and a half out. That's a lot. I will say, I think one of the things I often talk about is true. When you're hiring new staff, half of the work happens in doing the hiring and half the work happens in the onboarding. And so lots of energy last year, lots of energy this year. But I think that energy has produced good things. I think our staff is exactly what our churches right now need. I think we have hired to carry ourselves into the future. And I'm excited what futures that can be from our churches as we work in partnership together. They all bring gifts, several new gifts that we haven't had available to our churches in the past. And our churches are needing many of those new gifts that we haven't had available in the past. So I think it's all bright. Would I wish for a world where we are done with staff turnover? Absolutely. I'm not going to jinx myself though. So, Laura.
Question for Gordon. What are your hopes and dreams and goals for the upcoming year? now that we've gone through annual meeting?
Probably starts with an app. Um, no, actually, there are a couple I put into my annual report, and I would lean on those. And I'm sitting here saying I know there were three, and I can only remember what two of them are. So we'll see if the third one pops back in my head. One of the, and actually, the two that I have are both very much gifts that Thaddeus is bringing to us, because I don't know if we'd be able to tackle either of these without Thaddeus. So one is you have seen some of the redesign work we have done with the weekly news. We have already started the process of some redesign for our website. That will continue over the next couple months, and we hope to be launching a redesigned, more accessible, both for folks in our churches and for folks who aren't necessarily in churches website before the end of the year. So that's a goal I'm pretty sure we will see some actuality in. That will bear out one that I'm pretty excited about too, but will be a multi-year. It's not like we're going to say, okay, we're going to launch this in February. Which is one of the things we are noticing is some of what happened for generations. So traditionally in churches, doesn't happen with the same ease anymore. And that is, previous generations of deacons would train the next deacon. The previous clerk would train the next clerk. Previous pastoral relations folks would train the next pastoral relations committee. And we are having folks call up who said, I've accepted this role and there's nobody here to tell me what it means to do this thing. Help. How do I learn to do this? And normally we make, we will do things. Sometimes we'll bring some churches together, do some training. Sometimes we'll do this one-on-one. But we really want to make some of that more easily accessible. So we are looking to create a video library of, I've kind of been calling them mini TED Talks on how-to things for local churches. So they'll all kind of be in the 15 to 25-minute range. If you're looking about, what does it mean to do this? Hopefully you can go and find what you want. Now, it's going to take a few years to build all those out, because there's lots of things we should be doing on that. But our hope is to be adding several of those a year so we can start making some of those resources to churches. So your getting that information isn't always dependent on our schedule to put together a training or such for that. So that's one of our goals of things to do. And we've put some money in the budget to help us get some equipment to help do that and all of that. But I'm pretty excited about that. I will touch base. This is not my third thing from the annual report. I'm going to have to look at my own annual report to see what I said. But I am excited and hopeful about what our associations will discern coming out of this association capacity work that we have been doing. I pretty much since I started here, I've had concerns from associations saying, we just can't keep doing all of this and help. And I think we're trying to envision that time of what's the right way to help and how to do this. And I am pretty convicted with the approach that we're now talking about. And I know there's a whole heck of a lot more detail work to do on it. But I think that's just really necessary for associations that are feeling overburdened by responsibilities that have been given to associations, but in past generations, and take more than dividing the state by 7 it works to do right now. So that is one of my hopes for us. I am hopeful, and I'm really seeing this. I'm going to do search and call. Um, Search and call forever and always is going to be something different than we experienced 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly 40 years ago. Um, I don't see anything that makes me say that that pendulum is going to swing back, at least within my career span of doing this work. I think we are where we are, um, but I think we're developing some wonderful creative ways um, to still help our churches find leadership, even in the time when the market is so much thinner than we've ever experienced before. We have been helping several churches work towards pastor sharing options, so that even when we might not be able to get a church alone a pastor, we can pair a couple up together and get a position which will draw potential pastoral leadership to it. There are places that we are looking to strengthen lay leadership possibilities. In some cases, it might be things that lead to licensing for a church. In some cases, it might be where lay leaders continue to cover some things. Our church in Franconia has not had a clergy person for 8-9 years right now, and one runs wonderfully well. I spent a day with them 2.5 months ago, and they are just a fantastic church and have functioned without clergy for a while. So there's all kinds of not quite traditional ways to look at this, which will get you some of that leadership that is so needed in our churches. So my hope is we can continue to find ways to engage churches with this, but also help them set expectations. I think the biggest challenge in all of this is churches that feel that they're a failure if they are not able to step into that one church, one pastor model that so many of them grew up with for so long. And it's not a failure. There's lots of different ways to do ministry, and we're seeing a lot of thriving places. So, but we're talking about that. We talk a little bit about our history from time to time. That most all of our churches in New Hampshire here started by sharing pastors. We think of it as a new thing, and it's not a new thing at all. So, those are the ones that come up off the top of my mind. So, and the other one that is in that report that I can't think of.
Thanks, Gordon.
Gail.
Yeah, so greetings to everyone. I'm Gail Kinney from the Meriden Congregational Church. And just a couple of things, just a reaction. First of all, I think that the staff is fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And so I want to thank everyone, who's a part of the conference. You make it work in wonderful ways. To Tom, I just want to say that I went to the General Synod as a visitor, or as a guest, every synod from 2007 through 2019. And then there was sort of the COVID break, and I haven't been back, but I'm intending to. And, being a delegate has its own rewards or its own interesting things, but also a lot of responsibilities, and a lot of your work at the synod is scripted. If you're a delegate, you have to be at this place at this time, including those, 6:30 a.m. breakfast or whatever. But as a visitor or as a guest, you have a choice, and especially if you fully engaged, to go where you want, to go to the hearings you want, to really dive into the resolutions that speak to you, to engage in a number of the other sort of really inspirational activities. And so I understand there's a cost, and ever since Synod was every other year, and then after the next one will be every 3 years, I would save up so that I could go the next time around, knowing that it was something that I wanted to do. So I would, and I don't think enough people know that they can go to Synod as a guest or as a visitor. And I would sort of urge that, or that make it better known to people that everyone is welcome in one way or another, because it's an experience you'll never forget. And it may lead into wanting to be a delegate in the future, but just even not as a delegate. It really is a wonderful thing to do. So Tom, I hope you can do that sometime. So the other thing I wanted to say is that I think that probably maybe most conferences of the United Church of Christ have a thing that they do really well, or that's something that's really unique that only they do. And I think in our conference there are several things that are so unique to the New Hampshire conference, or so interesting, or so special, that I really hope we can that there will be this sense of ownership of these things among the leadership. I know, Gordon, the model of the Sacred Allied Quilt Project, which really was, resonated across the denomination, because folks in New Hampshire were so proud of it. But I want to name again the Immigrant Bond and Support Fund. And I want to say I appreciate the fact that the time was given to the Immigrant and Refugee Support Group to describe that a little more to people who probably really had no idea that it existed or the extent of what it did. So, and I know they went a little over the time that they were allotted, but I looked at the schedule closely and I think it all worked out. But other than like the Southwest Conference, which is right on the southern border and is doing very, very unique things for people who are crossing, desperate just to save their lives. The Immigrant Bond and Support Fund and the jail visitation program for people in ICE detention, and then really working with those individuals with ICE detention to get out who we can, to support in commissary those who have no hope in the near term of getting out, and then the support we provide to asylum seekers just to help get them back on their feet. I think is the comprehensiveness of what the New Hampshire is doing in little old New Hampshire, which came about because Dover, New Hampshire just happens to house a regional ICE detention facility. And so knowing or discovering that was there, or realizing that was there, a whole ministry grew up out of that. And I know that the IRSG is able to put stuff in the weekly news, but I still have a feeling that the conference as a whole doesn't really understand how different or how unusual or how awesome it is for and especially a small conference like New Hampshire to be doing this big life-saving, life-affirming work. So I just want to, so I'm appealing to you and Sarah to think of ways to really own that and to bring that to the conference, that we're doing this unusual thing. And this is a ministry that in one way or another, everyone can play a role, and telling the denomination the same thing. This is what New Hampshire is doing. Because frankly, other conferences could do the same thing if little New Hampshire can do it. So and there are other things. So that's just one, because that's near and dear to my heart. But I'm sure there are other things as well that New Hampshire is doing so extraordinarily that I would just implore you to figure out sort of new and creative ways beyond weekly news to take that to the people, to the congregations, and to the world, really. So anyway, I'll stop now.
So I don't want to lose this opportunity to not remind folks about the Immigration and Refugee Support Group webinar on November 14th at 7 o'clock. Thaddeus, is the information to sign up for that in this week's weekly news? Yes, so it'll be there. Dawn announced it yesterday with a big long title that I could not repeat today. But we'll have information out to you about that. That Sacred Allied Quilt Project, there was a third there that I was like, oh yeah, this is when I talk about what's unique in New Hampshire is on my list. And the third one is the work that our New Thing Task Force does, and help engaging us as congregation ways of thinking what are some of the new things that are needed in ministry. I think that's pretty darn unique in what we do. So yeah, thank you for raising some of those up.
So how can we, new and creative ways beyond annual meeting or, having a workshop at Prepared to Serve, and even with the weekly news that I'm not sure most people in the congregations read. I know it's got a good readership, but I'm not sure we're really reaching the masses. How do we really let the body of the conference know these unique things that we have taken on as ministry. And I don't have an answer, so I'm just asking.
So my answer, and I would be intrigued what everybody's answers are on this one. Well, first thing I would say is actually I think weekly news gets better readership than people give it credit for. Our subscription rate is somewhere around 1,900, and generally I take a look at each week. Generally, we have about a 50% open rate. They don't always click on everything in there, but they've at least looked at some of the weekly news. That's 1,000 people looking at things now. Are all 1,000 of those folks of our 14,000 members? Probably not. There's probably some folks in other conferences that are on that list too, but still, that's not a small amount. And as far as outreach, but I think the real thing that makes a difference is we could do 100 programs and do things. And I suspect in this video library, we'll start trying to do some teaching tools around some of these things we're doing as well. But this is where we need, particularly those of you who were at that annual meeting and got excited about something, go talk in your communities about what excited you. It's the same thing that we tell churches about new membership as we keep coming up with all these strategies for new membership. And yet, if you look at all the data, the thing that gets people to come to church, somebody from that church goes and says, hey, I'm excited about what's happening here. I want to tell you about it. I want you to come and experience it with me. It's the same thing with the conference. When you guys go say, hey, this really neat ministry is happening, folks, in my church, let me tell you about it. Let me get you excited about it. I think that's really the biggest way you get that word out. And we need all of you in order to make that happen. Other folks have strategies that you want to throw out there?
I just want to say, since I'm the communication specialist for the conference, going into 2024, we are visioning new ways to reach out to churches. We did put some budget into that for 2024. So we're looking at new, social media strategies is one example, but looking at other ways of doing that too. So, going forward, if you do have ideas, definitely tell us, come to us and suggest them. But also know that, we too know that just one mailing list is not enough to reach every single person in our conference.
And I think that I'm sorry, I'm Ruth Gallant again. One thing that excited me yesterday, because I was also incredibly excited in hearing about all of that, was when the gentleman, I don't remember his name, I'm sorry, offered to say, we will come to your church, because I'm in the process of developing might be ambitious, but a monthly Faith in Action Sunday, and to bring in people to talk about ways that people can engage, and they're going to be all kinds of different ways. And I was like, that was my big note of the week. Get that guy's name, and get him to come into the church, because I can talk about it. I can talk about how excited I am, but that excitement will be built more by his sharing or her. I mean, I know that Sandra's busy on Sunday morning, but to have somebody from that team come in and talk about what individuals in the church can do if they are passionate about this. There were concrete things that were mentioned, and where people can engage with that, and that was really exciting to me to see, not just this is a problem, which it is, but here's some concrete ways that me can become involved in this and can make a difference. So I think that's
something. I think that's an excellent point, Ruth. I was just trying to do the math in my head. And I think I at least got to 6 of times yesterday that somebody said, let us know because we will come to your church and talk about blah, 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 whether it was Don Goodnow, who was with the IRSG, whether it was Tivy about Horton Center, whether it was the New Thing Task Force. Several of the speak outs said that. Ukamba folks talked about that. Oh my goodness. If you offer an invitation, folks, people are going to be utterly excited to come in and help you with this stuff. But when you're just looking at 132 churches, it's hard to know which ones you want to seek invitations out. Much easier for you to say, hey, this would mean something to my congregation, and just extend the invitation, and we'll try to make sure we get folks to talk about the things you want talked about.
So Ruth, what is your church again?
Longmeadow in Auburn. Sorry, it's
Okay.
in Auburn, New Hampshire. I don't know why it's called Longmeadow. Nobody knows why it's called Longmeadow anymore. Nobody knows anymore.
Well, the meadow wasn't short.
That's what, there had to have been a long meadow somewhere, but nobody in town's able to tell me.
Well, I know this is off the subject, but because Ruth said that, I saw on Boston.com something about a Longmeadow Auburn playground that had some acid put on the slide. It was Massachusetts.
Oh.
At first I thought it was your town, and I went, whoa. And then I found out it was Massachusetts. So
that's funny because there is an Auburn, Massachusetts, and I'm from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So Longmeadow, and there's an Auburn, Mass, and a Longmeadow, Mass, and they're nowhere near each other.
Okay. Well, they used both of them, but in terms of that. But anyway.
No acid here. No.
Yeah. No, that's.
Friends, we have about 10 minutes left together. Are there other areas of conversation you want to venture into?
Well, I guess I'll repeat what I said before because we weren't recording when I said it.
Okay, please do.
But my appreciation for both you and Sarah and all of the background, that is, everybody that put together the annual meeting. As I said, I got some things out of both of the worship pieces that were helpful to me, as well as Becca's part. I mean, it was all together. To me, it was a very fruitful, spiritually, meeting for me. So that may be a personal thing, but I just felt it was, as we've said before, one of the better meetings that I've been to and I've been to too many of these types of meetings in both denominations, because for those that don't know, I'm American Baptist, but and I'm Linda Ratcliffe at Chester, but I've been to them for so long that this still had meaning to me and was good. So I appreciate that, and all the work that was behind the scenes in putting that all together, because that does take a lot of work. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying all that, Linda. I bragged on the staff. They worked tirelessly to make this happen. Both the behind the scenes things and the in front scene, there's lots of effort and lots of emotional, spiritual sweat that gets put into this. The annual meeting planning committee works for an entire year to get this ready. The board works on parts of this for 6 months. Lots of appreciation to get spread around. But it really, particularly the day after the meeting, it's really wonderful to hear that, because you just kind of put it all out in one day, and it's good to know that it's appreciated.
So I had a quick question. I had someone come to me yesterday saying they would be interested in being on the annual meeting planning committee, and how do you do that? And I didn't have a great answer for them. So I'm posing that question to you, Gordon. How does someone get on the annual meeting planning committee?
So Carlos Jahola Strait is our annual meeting planning committee chair. You say, I want to be on the annual meeting planning committee to Carlos, and he will say, yes, this is when we meet.
Great.
That simple.
That's actually the answer I gave, so I'm glad it was correct.
This is one for which there is no appointments or no elections. You don't have to go all through that. You just have to say that it excites you and you're a part. So. Any other things you all want to ask, inquire about? Well, seeing none, I will remind you. I know Tom wrote it down, but I don't know if everybody did. Tuesday night at 7, we have a connecting session with Becca Anderson, following up on her keynote address and getting to do some question and answer around that. So please feel free to join us for that. And then we will have our last connecting session on Thursday night, which is another one of these chances to talk with Sarah and I. It will again be Sarah and I, so you may say you have done that, and that's absolutely fine. It's really kind of set up to be an either order thing, but I will tell you with, my 6 well, we haven't done these virtually with 2 of them for 6 years. I think this is the 4th go around with doing it this way. The 2 of them are always very different. The questions that come out, there's like very little overlap. It surprises me every year. So if you're just really eager, hey, you can do both.
If I didn't sign up before to get onto Becca's, can we still get into Becca's?
Call us on Tuesday or shoot Thaddeus or Cindy an email tomorrow or Tuesday, and we will get you the Zoom link.
Okay, thanks.
And Thaddeus just put his email into the chat. Well, very good, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday day. I'm going to go make myself dinner and go to bed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
coming.